All right, can you see that Wednesday?
Yep, you're all good to go.
Awesome, thank you. All right, tēnā koutou katoa, ko tararua te maunga, ko manawatu te awa, ko raukawa ki te tonga, ko rua ko huia ngā iwi, kei manatu ahu mātua e mahi ana au, ko Melanie Hayden aho, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So kia ora everybody. I'm Melanie, and I'm really excited to be talking to you tonight about my research and giving you a little bit of advice for your postgrad studies. All right, so I'll just start by talking about myself. So I grew up in Papamoa in Tauranga, and when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time around the ocean with my surf sports, swimming. I did a little bit of sailing when I was younger. And so I became very quickly passionate about the ocean. And I also love science. So when I was 5, I wanted to be a volcanologist. And then when I did FireWise and learned how scary volcanoes and fire are, I quickly pivoted towards paleontology, especially after watching Walking with Dinosaurs. And then it wasn't until around year 8 or year 9 that I became more interested in marine science. And unfortunately, it was because of the Rena oil spill. So during this time, obviously, a lot of birds died. There was a lot of devastation. We couldn't go to the beach because there was oil just covering everything. And when I was in high school, we were doing a lot of learning around this, and I did a lot of projects about the environmental effects of the spill. So that's when I started becoming more interested in a career in marine science. And so skipping forward a little bit to my studies, and my studies were pretty straightforward. I studied at Auckland University. I started with a Bachelor of Science in Ecology, and then soon after that, I moved into my PGDip in Marine Science. And for those of you who aren't quite sure what a PGDip is, it's basically a 1-year course with different, still doing classes and preparing you a little bit more for further postgrad study, whether that's a master's or a PhD. And then last year I started my Master of Science in Biological Sciences, and it was focusing on the conservation physiology of the Hoiho, or yellow-eyed penguin. And so I'll talk a little bit more about this soon. But first of all, I'll just talk a little bit more about my science experience outside of studying. And so over summer, between my Bachelor of Science and my PGDip, I did a summer research scholarship. And that was a really cool way just to, I guess, get a taste of what postgrad study would be. And then at the end of my PGDip, before going into my master's, I did a Blake ambassadorship where I spent a month on the Tangaroa with Niwa doing pretty much fishery science. So that was really cool. And I definitely recommend, if you haven't already, trying to do a little bit of science experience before you finish university, because it can really help give you a taste of what a science job will look like afterwards. And it can also give you an idea of topics that might be interesting to you when you are doing your postgrad. All right, so during my PGDip, these are the papers I did. There weren't many compulsory courses that we had to do. And one of my favorite things about PGDip was that we only had one class per week for some of these courses. And during those classes, it was more about discussing the kind of current science that that was coming out, and sort of developing our critical thinking skills a little bit more around that science. One of the things that I was told before doing my PGDip was that you're either the type of person who really loves the PGDip and maybe isn't so keen on the masters, or you're one of those people who hates the PGDip and just wants to get through it as fast as possible so that you can start doing your research. I'm one of the people who liked my PGDip. I like reading, I like learning new things. I enjoyed the classwork, and I enjoyed being able to work a bit more autonomously. But yeah, a lot of the more practical people preferred to do their masters. And yeah, what I can say for those practical people who are thinking, oh no, I have to do a PGDip, I will say that there are actually some field courses that you can do that are really exciting and a lot of fun. One of those courses is Marine 702, and that photo of the dolphins, we actually got to see dolphins during one of the field trips out near Lee, and that person in the background swimming is me, because when everybody saw dolphins, they immediately just jumped in the water, and we didn't necessarily approach them, but it was a great 40 minutes during April when it was starting to get cold, just in the water, watching the dolphins swim around us. When we started our PGDip, obviously we were all thinking about choosing a supervisor, and that can be a bit of a daunting process. So a good place to start with that is to look at the work some of the lecturers at uni do, and thinking about what interests you in particular. And it would be really good to do some research if you have someone in mind, just to see what kind of work that they're currently doing, because they really like it when you know what kind of work they are doing now, rather than what they were doing in the past. I would also suggest that you think about what kind of things you want to get out of it. So I wanted to get some lab work, a bit of field experience, and some stats skills out of it. So obviously you can do that with quite a few master's projects. I have friends who wanted to do diving during their masters, and they found supervisors who were able to facilitate that as well. So definitely look at your options, and once again, do the research. A really important thing that I was told, and I'm always going to reiterate to everyone else, is to find somebody who you can work well with and that you can communicate really well with. When I did my summer research scholarship, I had a supervisor that was in the country for 1 week out of the 10 that I was supposed to be doing the scholarship. And I didn't know that that was going to be the case beforehand, because I didn't talk to them. And so if you are looking at your options for supervisors, definitely try and have a sit down with them, and have a chat about the current projects that are on offer, and set some clear expectations about what you would want from a project and from a supervisor. And that can just help also, it helps you get a vibe on what they're like, and if you think you could communicate well with them. And remember to get in early. A lot of supervisors are quite popular and people want to work with them, and by the time they go and meet with them, those supervisors might already be full with students. So definitely get in as early as possible, especially if there's one supervisor in particular that you really, really want to work with. These are my supervisors. So I had Brendon Dunphy as my main supervisor and Crystal Kane as my co-supervisor. Brendon is the staff Tuakana coordinator, and I was working in the Tuakana program as well. And so I already had a bit of a relationship with him through my work. He was also someone who I found really easy to talk to, and I thought that's a really great place to start with a supervisor. And he does a lot of work around ecophysiology, seabirds, and shellfish aquaculture. And so those were all areas that I was quite interested in. And basically the way I got my project with him, I was just talking to him one day, just casually about something else. And I mentioned that I was looking for a supervisor, and he said that he had a project on the yellow-eyed penguin that he really wanted to do, and he just needed to figure out if he was going to have any funding, but he would love to offer it to me if I was interested. And so I was quite lucky. It was just like a spur of the moment thing, really. But there was no way I was going to turn that down when I heard that penguins were involved. So yeah, I was really happy. And then Crystal, she was co-supervisor. So even though I didn't report to her directly on a lot of things, she was definitely great as somebody who was very supportive. I could go to her when Brendon was too busy, or if I just wanted to get different ideas on things. And she also works in similar areas. She does a lot of work with birds and hormones. And once again, she's really easy to talk to. So now a little bit more about the work that I did. So I was using feather samples to investigate the stress and foraging patterns of Hoiho, or yellow-eyed penguins, across 15 years at Rakiura or Stewart Island. And I did this with the help of the Department of Conservation, Niwa Yellow-eyed Penguin Trust, and Mana Whenua or Rakiura. Now, Hoiho is endemic to New Zealand, and as far as we're aware, they're nationally endangered. So we only have around 1,700 pairs left in the wild, and there are only about 180 at Rakiura, and this is based on quite old data, so it could be less than that. And by all accounts, we're seeing declining populations, especially on the mainland, where we've people who visit the subantarctics are seeing relatively healthy populations, and therefore we believe there might be a range retraction happening, possibly due to climate change, but we're not 100% sure why this is. So we wanted to basically investigate the why and see if there were higher stress levels in these birds. This is the strategy for Hoiho conservation at the moment. It was put together by DOC in conjunction with Kaitahu, the main iwi in the South Island. And I'm mainly showing this to you because if you want to work with animals, you need to have good justification for it with ethics approval and things like that. And basically we were using strategic priority 7F to justify why we wanted to work on these penguins. And I'm also showing this to you because we had a lot of plans last year to work not just with the temporal side and the 15 years of samples, but we also wanted to work across the different populations from the subantarctic and the mainland. And unfortunately, this happened. We had COVID, and it definitely took away our chances to do a lot of field work. But luckily, we were able to pivot to a more seasonal approach, and people from Yellow-eyed Penguin Trust had done feather sampling over the previous few years. And so all of these samples were from a similar time of the year during the fledging season for chicks. And that gave us quite a nice study that we were able to get a complete project on. The questions that we asked were if there had been any change in diet over time, and we were able to send our feathers off to Niwa to get stable isotope analysis. We asked if there was an increase in stress hormone levels over time, and we were able to do this in the lab by extracting the stress hormone corticosterone from the feathers. And then to try and explain some of the differences that we might have seen, we also looked at the differences in sea surface temperature or chlorophyll A by using satellite data from previous years. And what we found is that there was a change in foraging or diet over time. And you can see that there's a bit of grouping in more recent years where the diet signatures are quite similar. And what we're inferring from this, and based on previous studies that have shown a change in diet from a more varied diet to a more particular diet where they are only really feeding on one or two species now. And so, yeah, this data was able to show this without doing more invasive methods like stomach contents analysis. We also saw that there were changes in the stress hormone levels through time, although it wasn't a linear relationship. And so we tried to explain this with sea surface temperature and chlorophyll A, and unfortunately we didn't see any correlations, despite the increase in heat waves that we've seen in recent years. So we tried to find other ways to explain this, and there have been studies on breeding success in the years that we got the feather samples. So when we looked at the relationship between the stress hormones and breeding success, we saw a positive linear relationship, which was definitely not expected, because basically if we're seeing higher stress hormones in the feathers, it means that they are chronically, or more likely to be chronically stressed, which is not evolutionarily a positive thing. And so the best way we could explain this was through a sampling bias that we had, where we hadn't used feathers from dead penguins. And if we had used feathers from dead penguins, we might have found that those penguins had been more stressed, and therefore that positive relationship may not necessarily have been there. So what does this all mean? It means that we can use feathers to sample chick stress in a less invasive way. And it could potentially be used to help us predict breeding success in the future. If we could do this again, obviously we would like to increase the number of sites that we're using, and also look at the other potential causes for the relationships that we saw. On reflection, I would say that I got quite a bit out of my master's. Even though I wasn't able to work on penguins, I was still able to get some animal interactions by working with some of the other students that Brendon was supervising, which was really awesome that I was able to do that. I also got quite a few skills in the lab, in the field, from doing this work, and obviously stats skills by doing my classic R and sigma plot analyses. And unfortunately, if you don't like stats, you might need to start liking it a bit more, because it's very important for your masters. I also got some sanity out of it. Obviously, it was the year of COVID, so it was important to get to have something to do with the time, and I had a lot of time to write, so I was able to cope with it that way. And then my personal favorite thing, I was able to get my thesis out of it, and I actually have my own copy, which is awesome to be able to show people. My advice to you, eventually you're going to need to get a job, and so one of the things that can help you do that is if you're preparing for it through your masters. And so one of the things I did was set up some standard hours, so that when I'm during those hours, I'm trying to do my thesis, and outside those hours I can chill. And I think that's a really important thing that helps with your work-life balance. I think it's also important to figure out your learning style. So obviously we all work differently, and what works for me might not work for you, but if you know what works for you, then that's going to be really valuable in the future. So definitely try and hold on to that and figure it out. Another thing in terms of self-care is just realizing that when you're writing, even a little bit is a lot, and future you will be very happy with that one line that you wrote today, because it's another line that you don't have to write tomorrow. And if you've never heard of the Pomodoro technique, I suggest you look that up, because that definitely helped me during my writing time. And it might be a little cheesy, but I would say try and figure out what your why is. And what I mean by that is figure out what you want to be doing in the future, where you want to be, who you want to be, and basically how is your postgrad study going to help you get there? And I think that's a great way to help motivate you when you're going through those tough times and you're struggling to write, or you're struggling to sort of push yourself through it. If it's helping you get to where you want to be in the future, then it's always going to be worth it in the end. But most importantly, we are more than what we study. So always have those things that are going to keep you sane, that you can do outside of your study, because they're going to help ground you, and they're going to help you get through it and have a lot of fun. Personally, this is where I am now. I've come out the other side of uni. I got engaged to my partner at the start of this year, and I'm currently working on the MPI Graduate Development Program, which is 18 months, working through 3 different teams. I started the year in animal welfare, and I'm currently a fishery officer. Unfortunately, I started 1 week before we went into lockdown, so I haven't done much yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing where that takes me. And I hope to do a PhD in the future, but right now I'm just happy to be earning some money. Thank you very much for listening, and please do get in touch with me if you don't have any questions right now. Then yeah, feel free to contact me in any of these ways. All right, any questions?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Melanie. That was really cool. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask, or post in the chat. I'll kick us off. Aside from COVID, what was one of the, what were some of your bigger challenges with doing a postgraduate study?
Ooh, I think definitely like finding that motivation to write. I know I say like, what is your why and everything like that, but I think definitely, yeah, writing obviously can be a struggle for anyone, and a thesis is quite a big piece of work. So one of the ways I managed to get through all that writing was by, breaking it up into small bits, whether that's like coming up with your introduction and then your method and then your results, and even just chopping that up into smaller paragraphs. It was a great way just to sort of get through it one step at a time.
Did you meet that blobfish?
Did I eat it?
Meat. Is that one of the ones from the Tangaroa?
Yes, yeah, that was from the Tangaroa. One of my favourite fish, definitely.
Nice. How deep was that fish before it got pulled up, or was it just like that all the time?
That was probably, I don't know, we were sort of aiming for between 800 meters and 1.2 kilometers generally, so somewhere around there.
We have a question in the chat, which is, how did you get involved in the MPI graduate program? And the second one is, how do you meet your supervisors? So first one, MPI grad program.
All right, yeah, so I got involved in the grad program. I think the applications have just closed for this year, but yeah, every year they'll have applications opening around, I want to say August or July, and yeah, it's really cool. I definitely recommend it for anyone who wants to go into more public sector work, and it gives you experience in different teams, so that's definitely like a plus to the grad program. But yeah, I got involved by applying. Yeah, and then as for how I met supervisors, meet and greet events, not necessarily. I think some like the UMSS and CISA can often do a lot of talks, speaker nights and stuff like that, where some of the lecturers will be invited to talk about some of their work that they're doing. Otherwise, the way I was meeting supervisors was just through finding the lecturers that I liked and sending them a quick email to say, hey, I like your work and I want to know more about what you will be doing later on. If you're nervous about doing that kind of thing, I would say just remember that those supervisors are people as well, and they're more than happy to talk about their work. And I think that they're honestly excited when people are interested in the things they do. So come with questions about what they do and they'll be happy to talk to you. Another question, how was your experience at Blake Ambassadors and did it help with your masters? Yeah, my experience was awesome, I'd say. For someone who hasn't done a voyage like that before. It was almost like a once in a lifetime type of thing. It was really helpful, I think, just to understand what science in the field can look like. And lake ambassadorships, there's lots of different types. You could be doing lots of different things, but it helped me, I think, understand fishery research a bit more, and especially working at MPI now, it's helped me, it's helped me sort of know what kind of work I would like to do. In terms of my master's, we did go down to the sub-Antarctic during that trip, and although it didn't directly sort of overlap with the work I was doing in my master's, I think it helped set the scene for me, and especially because I didn't get to go down there as part of my master's. It just sort of helped me know what it could have been like.
Awesome. I think we will move on to Georgia now. Thank you so much, Melanie. That was really cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mel. That was a lot more, a lot better than what mine's going to be, but all right, let me share my screen. I'm going to be looking off to the side when I do mine because I have 2 screens. Okay. Oh, am I sharing the wrong screen? Can you see it?
We see the Microsoft PowerPoint kind of layout.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're
Sweet.
all good to go.
Cool. Okay. Kia ora tātou, ko rangitoto te maunga, ko orewa te awa, no tamaki aho, ko third toko whanau, ko Georgia toko ingoa. Kia ora. So yeah, I'm doing my master's in marine science in the Joint Graduate School, Coastal Marine Science with NIWA and the University of Auckland. So a little bit about my timeline. So I started out, I've done everything so far at the University of Auckland. I started out my first semester in biomed. I was tossing up a little bit between marine science and biomed, and it only took me a couple of weeks to realize that I much prefer studying things that I can see. I'm not very good at things that are small and microscopic. So marine science is way better because I can see the fish. So yeah, I switched very quickly to marine environmental science, and kind of, if there was such thing as a minor in statistics. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. Then I went into my PGDipSci, and Mel's given a great introduction to what a PGDipSci is, so I'm not going to go over that again. And I did that last year over Zoom mainly because of the pandemic. It's pretty fun doing a field course on Zoom. It doesn't really work, but and yeah, then I moved into my master's, and yeah, I'm based at the NIWA office in Auckland, which I really enjoy, and I'll talk more about that in a second as well. And yeah, and now I'm sort of sorting out my next steps. I'm pretty set now on doing into my PhD and keeping up my momentum. And I'm considering 2 options, either running away to America and doing a PhD over there, or extending my master's to a PhD, which is what a surprising number of marine science students do. If you have a project, a master's project that is suitable to be extended and has the scope of a PhD, then you can do that, and it also knocks a couple of years off getting a PhD as well, which is really useful. Okay, so thesis searching, and also kind of helps whoever was asking that question in the chat before. I kind of always knew that I was going to do a master's. I realized that the sort of jobs and directions I wanted to go with marine science needed some postgrad study. So I started looking at the projects that were coming up and just kind of keeping an eye on things in my 3rd year. So at the start of my 3rd year, I started really thinking about things, which was quite abnormally early, but I am just that sort of a person. So yeah, I started looking, and what I found a really valuable resource was guest lecturers. I knew I was kind of interested in the fisheries science sphere, and Auckland Uni isn't a big, massive fisheries science place. There's not a lot of places actually in New Zealand in general, actually, in undergrad that focus on fisheries science. And there's no like really full-time fisheries scientists at Auckland Uni. So in the fisheries and aquaculture course, the guest lecturers coming in were the main sort of fisheries scientists that I was exposed to. And after like basically every lecture that I had from a guest lecturer that I thought was interesting, I would go up to them afterwards and be like, hey, you know, I'm interested in your research. Do you have any postgrad positions? Or, you know, kind of started a conversation around that. And I realized that may be a little bit trickier when you're doing lectures on Zoom now. But can't hurt to still just send an email, introduce yourself. Yeah, like what Mel was saying, anyone that you find interesting, have a look at some of the papers they may have published recently, some of the work they're doing. And if that interests you, just fire them off an email. They're usually more than happy to have a meeting and chat. I found being class rep quite a useful tool actually in going into postgrad, because I was interacting with my lecturers in a like different sort of environment, like chatting to them about the course rather than about the coursework, and kind of getting to know, you get to know them, they get to know you. And I found that quite a useful tool for working out what lecturers I felt like I vibed with. Internships are also a really valuable opportunity. You get some exposure, you get to try out a little bit of research and figure out, oh, this is for me or this isn't for me. And I did an internship with Cawthron Institute in Nelson in their salmon aquaculture facility, and I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed the fish, and I was quite interested in doing an aquaculture project, and sort of was going down the path of setting one up with Neil Herbert, and I was really excited about that. And then I realized more and more that it was getting down a like physiology type of path. And I'm quite a, big picture, more sort of a person. And it was really important for me that my research had some sort of like management implications, or some like direct implications basically from my research. And I just felt like this physiology salmon project was just getting a bit separate. Although it was on fish, it just didn't feel right. It didn't really feel like me. And I kept like looking through Find a Thesis all the time. That's a really, really valuable resource. Is the Find a Thesis website. It's part of the Uni of Auckland. Just checking that often. And I found one that popped up on Snapper, and it was the first one. So I'd been looking all the way through my third year and then through my PGDip year as well. And eventually, like 3/4 of the way through or halfway through my first semester of my PGDip, I found the Snapper one, and I was like, this is way more me. And I had to send Neil email to say, sorry, I've actually found something that's just more me, which was a bit scary to do, but I'm really glad that I did it. So this is what I'm studying now. I'm doing it with Dr. Darren Parsons, who is an absolute legend. And I think he's a really casual sort of a supervisor, which I really value. Some supervisors are really strict about, you must have things to me on this date at this time, or I'm just not going to read it. That's what I hear from some of my friends. And I'm like, oh, that's not doesn't really work for me. Great supervisor. And so it's a NIWA-based lab project. So I'm based at NIWA in Auckland rather than at the university, either at Lee or City. I'm currently the only student there, which is a little bit different. But I don't mind it so much because I have my friends that I talk to a lot. But if connection to other students around you is important, then maybe if you had an opportunity to base yourself at NIWA, it probably wouldn't be great. But I've really tried to treat this like a job, like Melanie was saying as well. I go to NIWA, I literally feel like a job because it's in an office. I have a desk, I have my lab, and it's been really good to get my foot in the door with them. Now I know the people at NIWA really well, they know me, and there's sort of opportunities for employment once I'm finished studying, which is really cool. So I'm using morphology and diet of snapper to try understand a bit more about their population structure, because when we established the quota management system, we kind of just drew lines on a map, which isn't really how fish populations work. So I'm trying to help get a better understanding of what the population structure is, to propose better biologically suited management boundaries, and also advance the understanding of snapper ecosystem interactions to move towards ecosystem-based management. Oh yeah, that's the set hours work thing. For my mental health, it's been very valuable, and I'm struggling in lockdown because I don't have my set going to my place of work and doing my study. So I'm only like halfway through my master's at this stage, so these are really preliminary data, but if you can see in this graph here, we see some overlap, but actually reasonably good geographic separation of morphological data, body morphology, according to sort of my hypotheses on where the splits are. So snapper 1, there's some separations. There was hypothesized that there's some overlap between the north of snapper 2. I should have had a map in here, sorry. Just around the corner from Bay of Plenty. And so there's a bit of connection there, which is what we expected, but a split between North and South Snapper 2, which are currently in one quota management system, but looking to try split that in half. And then Snapper 7, which is the South Island, is all the way down here, and West Coast is over here. And West Coast, these are meant to be together in one genetic stock, and this is another genetic stock, but there's morphological populations that split the two. And then I'm looking at otolith morphology as well, which are the ear bones. And I found with just from caliper measurements on them, I can tell whether it came from the northeast genetic stock or the southwest genetic stock with 88% accuracy, which is pretty exciting. That's hot off the press. That's only last week's data. And yeah, my diet analysis and functional morphology, so how the body shape relates to the diet, is halted thanks to COVID, but hopefully I'm let back into the lab soon. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the jobs that I've found work really well with postgrad. Some people don't work at all during their masters. I was not in a financial position to do that, so I needed some employment. You can get a stipend if you get an A grade or above in your PGDip year, and that if you'd like screw up a little bit in undergrad, as long as you work really hard in your PGDip year, then you can still get the stipend. So it's just based on the 1 year, but that doesn't quite cover everything for me. So Nano Girl is an awesome employer working with Dr. Michelle Dickinson. She's been an amazing mentor. It's given me lots of good exposure to practice my science. Over lockdown, I've been Zooming schools like 3 a day and talking to them about my snapper research. I also just made a really fun video about snapper diets. I'm going to look at that on YouTube. But the main part about working with like any sort of job with postgrad is finding someone who's compassionate and flexible. If you have like deadlines coming up or lab hours or field trips, like you need to find employers that are compassionate about that. I'm sure you probably know that already with doing a degree. It helps to be related to science and to give you some skills to put in your CV, but it's not necessary. I also do some journalism. So I write for a few magazines on science stuff. And this has been a really good opportunity to practice my science communication. That's a really valuable skill that employers are looking for. And this one, this magazine, I've only started writing for them recently. And I just emailed them with a few examples of my work and asked if they'd like like to publish some? And they said yes, and I get paid for it, and it's like pretty easy. So yeah, just email some magazines you think interesting and look cool, with some cool articles. And NIWA, so they do biosecurity ambassadors, and having that word ambassador on your CV is also a really good one. And they also have boat ramp interviewers. And again, getting your foot in the door, if you have interest in working with NIWA, or even if you don't, it can really help to have your foot in the door with an employer like that. And the biosecurity ambassador job, it was a breeze. I walked up and down Gulf Harbour Marina in the summer, listening to podcasts and occasionally surveying people that would talk to me. It was a great job. So some internships. Cawthron one was really valuable to me. Other ones that I've applied for, DOC, Watercare, Blake Ambassadors, the UOA Summer Research Scholarships, and the NIWA ambassadorships, like super valuable, foot in the door, you learn some valuable skills, all things that I've already covered in this talk. Some final random tidbits of advice. Shop around, start looking early, use that Find a Thesis website, really start thinking about what you want to get out of your master's, and who you think you would work with well. Oh, this is just a little bit of a diagram. Can you see these snapper look totally different from one another? People think all snapper look the same until they really think about it. Do stats. Stats is super valuable and it helps a lot. Do some stats in undergrad, and write good notes. I think the paper I'm most glad I took was the multivariate analysis paper. It's a stage 3, but I only had to take like one stage 2 paper to get to that, or maybe 2. Yeah, anyway, not that many, but I just wish I wrote better notes for it when I'm trying to refer to my multivariate code and stuff now. But you'll need stats. If you're doing a master's, you'll have to do stats. Go to conferences, which kind of links into these 3 will kind of link together. Take all the opportunities that you can. And your masters, you can, as long as COVID doesn't annoy and muck up plans, you can go to conferences, and it's like a holiday that the uni pays for. They put you up in accommodation, they pay for the travel there. It's really fun. You get to meet other marine scientists from around the country and get to know the people at your own uni better too. Take as many opportunities as possible, things like 3-minute thesis, poster competitions. It's really good practice to practice communicating your science, and it really forces you to know what you're studying as well. And apply for everything. Apply for heaps and heaps of scholarships until it starts to mess with your mental health. But yeah, apply for as many as possible, because if you're not in it to win it, then yeah, you're not in it. Ask for feedback and any opportunity. If you're not getting scholarships, if you're not getting jobs, ask them why. They might say no, they might say yes. Doc is really good at giving. They gave me some really valuable feedback on an application, and that's been so useful going forward. Get to know your lecturers. I know some of the lecturers are really struggling on Zoom as well. I'm sure you all are, but it's not easy for a lecturer either to talk to a screen of blank boxes. So turn your camera on. They really appreciate it. It's not quite the same as getting to talk to them after a lecture, but I think these small actions go a long way. Get familiar with referencing software. My supervisor, and I think other supervisors too, are really firm on using referencing software. It's super useful, and if you're familiar with it before you start your masters, it's really helpful. Yeah, so that's all I have. I'm surprised how long I talked for. I hope that was some useful information.
Thank you, Georgia. That was really cool. Do we have any questions? We've got one in the chat. What is your process for writing scientific articles?
What is my process? I often found again, guest lectures, or just things you're learning about in class. I was like, that's interesting, and I can rewrite this in a way that the public, public will want to know about this, and I rewrite it in a way that is easy to communicate. and yeah, just I write lectures in a easily digestible format. Different magazines, one of them I write for is 800 words, another one I write is for 400 words. So shrinking things down into either that size. And that, again, it really helps you understand the things that you're learning in class when you write about it for work. I saw some other ones come in. Do I have any recommendations on magazines or journals that may be interesting in students writing for them? I think I write for the Junction and the Valley Voice magazine, which are actually both sort of rural-ish magazines. The Junction's from like Lee up to Warkworth and like that sort of coast, and the Valley Voice is around rural Auckland. But I think the Newsroom is one that's always looking for students. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how. Just Google have an eye out for some magazines. Even maybe if you start like at Crackham, the uni magazine, or I think I've just saw one come out recently, some sort of science one that Auckland Uni's doing. You maybe start there, and then once you have that on your CV, you can work up to bigger magazines. How often do opportunities for undergrad research opportunities arise? If so, how do you find out about that? Mainly over summer. So that's the Uni of Auckland summer research scholarships. They're up every summer. You can even apply to one slightly outside of your major. Like there's geography, environmental science, marine science ones that all can have marine-y themes. And yeah, so keep an eye out on those. I think they might be coming out soonish, or they might already be out. Yeah, and then internships as well. So I always kept an eye out on Doc, Cawthron, Mel, Wednesday, or Tamlin or Eddie. Can you think of any other good undergrad internships?
Plant and food.
Oh, plant and food, yeah. Yeah. So just I sign up, you can sign up to their like careers websites and sign up for job notifications, and they'll email you when internships come out.
Yep. And there's currently 2 Auckland Council ones available with freshwater.
That's another one. Auckland Council.
That's really good.
Yeah. Yes, UOA scientific. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of that I couldn't remember. Yeah, all Scion. Yeah, all great stuff in the chat. Oh, that was you that was saying on Wednesday. Have I missed anything?
There was a question about how do you get funding for research projects?
My main source of funding is my stipend. So the automatic research scholarship, because I got an A grade or above 8 GPA in my PGDip year, you get an instant stipend. And then because I'm working under NIWA's umbrella and I'm working in their office, all my like materials and stuff are paid for by them, and they take care of all the purchasing of fish and stuff like that. So being under their umbrella is really good. Other sources of funding, you just have to keep Googling scholarships funding. When you're looking on Find a Thesis, it will say either like it's funded or unfunded, or that's another conversation. When you're talking to people about, do you have a project, like don't be afraid to ask, is it funded or is it not funded? Yeah, that's my main points on that.
Alrighty, one last one before we move on to Tamlin. Do you learn everything you need on your masters, or do you need to have those skills in advance?
You learn a lot while you're doing your masters. You don't need to have all these skills in advance, definitely not. And I still, like, I'm only partway through a master's, and I want to do a PhD because I still don't have the skills that I want. So yeah, you definitely learn as you go. You don't need to do that in advance. But yeah, it's helpful. I think stats definitely is something that supervisors are looking for, and the more you know about stats when you go in, the easier you make it on yourself. I just saw something else pick through about uni subsidizers conferences. So in your master's year, there's a budget, and they pay for your conference fees and then a small amount towards accommodation and transport. So like Wednesday, and I see Annabelle's on the call, and another friend as well, we got like an Airbnb. It was the Marine Science Conference in Tauranga this year. Tamlin was also there. And yep, they just paid like you some fuel to go down there, pay for your conference fees and your accommodation. Yeah, which is pretty mean. Yeah, cool. All right, I'll hand over to someone else.
Yeah, the fuel subs are pretty good actually if you do drive yourself as well. I don't know what the uni are doing right now, but I'd say if you do the master's thing, get to a conference, and then yeah, you might even find it profitable. Who knows? I'm not saying anything.
Alrighty, you can start whenever you're ready, Tamlin.
Okay, hi everyone, kia ora. I'm not as prepared as the others, so my apologies. I had my jab a few days ago and I have a few health things, so I'm a little bit wiped out, but I've sort of got my journey in my head, and you have to just put up with my face being on screen. So when Wednesday asked me to do this, I was a bit surprised because I'm not much of a role model, but I think I have a good journey anyway, nonetheless. So hopefully you guys will take from it what you will. So my journey to doing a PhD was sort of, I think a lot of people are quite focused and they know what they want to do. So they go to school, college, university, they might study biology or something marine related. And then it sort of, you know, quenches that thirst in their head for knowledge, and they keep going to whatever level they want. That totally wasn't me. So at school and college, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I sort of just messed around with my friends, and I got reasonable grades, but they weren't really anything to write home about. They just about got me into university in the UK, which is where I'm from. But when I finished college, I only came out with like one A level, I think it was, or maybe 2 A levels. I'm not sure if you guys even have A levels, but you know, when you're 18, those courses that you take. So I didn't do particularly well. One of them was a C and the other one was a D, I think. So yeah, this is a bit of a share all. But after that, I was thinking, all right, well, I've always held this interest in the sea, and I'm from a seaside town. So I thought, oh, I'll volunteer at my local sea life centre and just do that for a while. So I worked in this record shop, and whenever I had spare time, I'd sort of run off down to the sea life centre and give a few talks. But I was mainly on cleaning duty, and I'd sort of spend my time wandering around, cleaning the various aquariums and doing water tests and things, and some basic animal husbandry, but nothing to sort of write home about. But I really liked it because I got to spend time in an aquarium all the time, which was really good. So I got to see all the little beasties swimming around, and they had all sorts of different things there. And then it sort of came time to apply for university, and I still, for some reason, I think I kind of bottled it a bit. I wasn't 100% I should do marine biology or something like that. And then I found out one of my friends was doing physical geography. So I thought, right, that's the ticket. I'm going to go do physical geography with one of my mates, have a good time in Manchester, which was a different part of the UK to where I'm from. So I went over there, and before I'd even got there, my friend had dropped out. So I was like, okay, well, I'll do the course anyway, see what it's like. It should be quite interesting. Yeah, the 1 A level I did was in geology. So it was to do with the environment. And I've always been quite interested in the natural world. You know, when I was a kid, I used to love looking through like natural encyclopedias and looking at maps of where the species were, and yeah, learning where the most dangerous animals were, and then swimming around in my really cold sea in the North Sea, thinking about sharks and thinking something's going to bite me. But anyway, it was all good. So then where was I? Eventually, I did this degree course in physical geography, and realized I was quite into conservation because it has some conservation modules. So I sort of followed those and sort of streamlined it a little bit. And I was also interested in volcanology as well for a bit, due to doing geology at my sort of later school. So there were some volcanology bits in there. And then my degree finished, and I went out into the wide world, and I was wondering what sort of job I would get. I sort of ended up on this, I don't know, for years. I worked for an IT firm for a little while, like writing websites. And then I worked, what else did I do? I had all sorts of odd jobs. I worked at Subway, loads of different retailers like the Disney store, just heaps of stuff. I've always been quite busy, I suppose, in that respect. But there was still, you know, this sort of quench for the marine world and for the oceans, which I found really fascinating. And then I went into travel. So I worked as a travel agent for a while, which was quite a nice job because the perks of the job were lots of travel. So they sort of send you off to different corners of the world a couple of times a year. And you get to go and see amazing things and get toured around by these guides. Yeah, so it was a bit of a mixed path. And then I managed to save up some money for my travel job. And I thought, right, I've got to satisfy this marine sort of curiosity itch. So I paid to do a master's in the UK at the University of York. And yeah, then that felt really good. It was a lot more interesting than my undergrad. And I thought, okay, this is a bit more me. And I was still a bit unfocused, but I didn't have any exceptional grades. And I thought I need to work really hard at my master's to get a good grade, because I thought that would open up doors if I did want to do a PhD in the future. Or at the very least, it would just give me a good grade on my CV. So I worked my tail off for that year and managed to get a distinction, which was an A-, which was really handy. I'll come on to that later. And during that course, we learned about marine reserves, which I realized I was quite into, because where's a better place to snorkel than a marine reserve? You know, all these holidays I've been on were basically trips to go to the sea, where I thought it might be exciting stuff, like the Great Barrier Reef or Thailand or other places. So the opportunity to study marine reserves for a master's as part of my master's was great. And I also did a placement as well. So as part of that course, you had to organize your own external placement. So I organized one in the Maldives with the Maldives whale shark research program. And that was really cool. I had to pay a little bit of money to get there and a little bit of money for food while I was there, but it wasn't that much. And I wasn't employed, but I was sort of like a volunteer supervisor and coordinator. So I basically looked after the other volunteers who were there, who just sort of paid a substantial amount of money to go and join in with the research. And I got to swim around every day and photograph whale sharks. And yeah, it was really fascinating. So and it was part of an MPA as well. So there's a big MPA where these whale sharks are, because it's probably the best place to see whale sharks in the world. Excuse me. It's called the South Ariatoll Marine Protected Area, and every day we'd go out in this donny, this local sort of timber boat, which is really beautiful. And you'd set off in the morning, and you'd see flying fish, and we saw swordfish breaching, or maybe it was a marlin, I can't remember exactly, but there was heaps of turtles as well and dolphins. It was like being in the documentary. It was awesome. And what we were really looking for was whale sharks. So you see them from the top of the boat, and then you'd get ahead of them in the boat, jump in and go and take photos and ID them. And that was all to help their database, to help understand why they were there. So after that, I was thinking, this marine world's pretty good. So yeah, I'm quite into this. And then finished up the masters. And then after that, the masters have been a bit of a push, and I had some part-time jobs along the way as well. So I worked as a fundraiser for the University of York. And that was a good job to do alongside your studies. And I also worked as an assistant ecologist doing bat surveys with a team of people. Basically, I just go to a house in the middle of the countryside, put up a little antenna, some headphones, and record the bat noises. That was basically it. It was great. I got paid, and it looks good on my CV. So it's all about finding those little things sometimes. Anywho, after finishing up my master's, I was a bit spent, and I think my partner was a bit sick of hearing me talk about essays all the time and exams and all this stuff. Because in the UK, your master's is 1 year. So you do all your taught modules and your thesis in the same year, and your placement as well in our case. So it's quite full on. So she was saying, you better not do a PhD. So I was like, okay, I won't, don't worry about it. And then it's funny how things turn out. And then we planned a trip somewhere. I think it was in Malaysia. But unfortunately, when I was there, I kind of fell ill. So then we moved back home to the UK, and we thought, okay, what should we do now? And then I sort of recovered a bit, and my wife said, oh, why don't we go see what New Zealand's like? You know, we can get a working holiday there. And I was thinking, oh, what am I going to do in New Zealand? I'm not really too sure. So I started thinking about a PhD, you know, secretly at first while I was getting the plan together. And then and then what I did was I thought, what am I into? I'm into reserves and predators like grouper or sharks or any of that sort of stuff. So I was looking on findaphd.com, pretty like rudimentary websites, stuff that you just type in if you're any sort of Tom, Dick or Harry like me trying to figure it out. And those PhDs sounded good, but a lot of them to do with sharks or grouper involved diving and other things that unfortunately I couldn't do anymore. due to these ongoing health reasons. So that sort of ruled out a lot. So I was like, oh, what else shall I do? And I was thinking back to my masters, and I thought, well, I liked marine reserves. That was really cool, and conservation. So those two go hand in hand. And I was also learning that they can boost fisheries as well. So I thought that might work for me. And during my masters, I've done a bit on stats and a bit on spatial modeling and spatial analysis, both of which I did not like at all. So naturally, I tried to find a PhD in those subjects. So I ended up emailing a couple of different people around New Zealand. And I found them just on their university staff pages. So I just looked through, and it often says, what their interests are, who their current students are. And I was sort of scrolling through these different people, and I was thinking to myself, oh yeah, this person might fit the bill. So I emailed a guy called Mark Costello, who's now left the University of Auckland, but he was there for many years. He's now in Norway. And he's just said to me, yeah, if you're into marine reserves, why don't you put together a PhD proposal and send it over, and I'll have a look. And if it's good enough, then we'll go from there. Excuse me. So instead of finding one online, I just wrote my own one up, and then I emailed it off to him. It did take a while. Probably took a good solid week for me to get it where I thought it was right. He checked it over, emailed me back within a few days, said it looks good. And then there was a process to go through with the University of Auckland where I had to, make sure everything was ticked off. And then I was kind of hoping that Mark might have a bit of money. I don't know. I guess I wasn't the most prepared PhD student, let's put it that way. But he just said to me, right, you just need to get the funding, so go away and do that. And I was thinking, right, okay, how much is it going to work? So I was totting up how much it was going to cost. Anyway, it turns out it's quite a lot to self-fund your own international PhD. So I started searching through all these different scholarships and emailing different people. I ended up with this huge spreadsheet with Leonardo DiCaprio and all these different random people on it, just trying to get some money from them to support this PhD idea that I'd been granted by the University of Auckland. So it was official, but didn't have the funding to do it. And then I thought, well, I've got this grade for my master's, but it wasn't quite enough to get a university doctoral scholarship, because I think the minimum is an A, or at least it was when I applied, and I had an A-. So I was shopping around a bit more, and luckily I managed to find this scholarship, which is called a Commonwealth Scholarship, so between the UK and New Zealand and a few other countries. And one important thing I think is that the scholarships advice on the Uni of Auckland Scholarships website isn't always 100%. I think it's really worth contacting the scholarships office and also looking to see if those individual scholarships have got their own websites, because that's what I had to do. So when I was applying for the PhD, it said you will be automatically considered for all scholarships. So I thought, great, I've automatically applied for this Commonwealth thing. Fingers crossed that comes through. And then my partner said, no, you should definitely look into that more. So I found this thing online, and it had this whole application. I needed to get references and do all sorts of bits and pieces, CV, cover letter, the usual. And the deadline was in a few days. So I managed to turn it around really quickly. Thankfully, to my previous employers, got on the phone and they gave me good references. And then I managed to sort of get in there on this Commonwealth Scholarship, which has been an absolute blessing. So yeah, it's really worth hunting around, and even when you have found a scholarship, make sure you're really applying for it directly, so you don't miss out. Because I don't think I'd be here without it at all. I don't think I could have raised that money. So yeah, that's been really good. So where are we up to now? Oh yes, I started my PhD, and I think I've figured it through. I'm just looking through my little list here. Bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so then I kind of rolled up on the first day, and so what it's like to do a PhD. It's an unusual thing, I'd say. I think like George was saying, there's sort of an element where you're quite alone, and it depends. Sometimes it's a research team and you work quite closely together, and other times you're on your own project. And I was sort of coming into it and thinking I'd be part of this lab group, and there's going to be an induction, I'd be with a group of people the whole time. But basically, I just walked into an office one day and tried to turn on my computer, and someone was like, "That's my computer." I said, "Okay, all right, well, maybe I'm in the wrong room." And so it was a strange start. And then slowly I sort of got the ball rolling as you go to these different induction events that they have. and I met some more of my supervisors team, but we're all doing different things. So it's been quite an individual process. And that's definitely worth considering if you're thinking about doing a PhD, is it's worth sussing out how closely you'll work with others, because it is mentally more challenging when you're going against something that's quite tough by yourself. But anyway, I was already in it to win it. So I figured, well, I've got to stick it out, once you've signed up. And it wasn't all bad. The people were very friendly who were there, and it was in marine science. So I thought, this is, what else am I going to do? And what I'd say it's like a regular job, but it's all about marine stuff, and you basically don't have to report to anyone, which is really nice, because sometimes you'll get an email come through with, journal this, or some new shark species has been found, or whatever, and you can kind of go on a little tangent and just look that up and read the journal or see what the species is. I work a lot with threatened species, so I felt like a big part of my PhD at the beginning was just learning what all these threatened species were and where they were and looking at their maps. And it's been quite nice in that respect, because when I was a kid, I used to look at maps of where these different animals were. And now I'm actually making those maps as part of my PhD. So it's funny how life can go full circle like that. And what I'm doing now is basically I'm looking at how you can balance the protection of threatened species and marine biodiversity with fishing. That's the big thing. So we've got all these hot spots that we fish around the world, and I'm sort of saying, all right, well, we don't want to protect those, but maybe if we just protect a little bit, we can protect that threatened species, or like 20 threatened species there. And then I've sort of weighed it all against food security. And my results show that you can protect, about 90% of the most important places for marine biodiversity and threatened species. And it only costs about 10% of a fishing catch. And given that we're overfishing anyway, we probably need to reduce by about 10%. So that's been the main result of my work so far. As I say, it's a lot of spatial modeling and mapping. So I've had to really brush up my R skills and ArcMap skills, which has been, at times it's been a real challenge, and other times you kind of go through it. And there is support at the university, but I think it's not always obvious to find. But there's some good stat support people around. And then I think crucial to progressing when you get stuck. And then more recent work, I've been looking at how you can determine egg production from big, old, fat, fecund female fish. So the big ladyfish, when they get old, they make heaps of eggs, like way more than the younger ones. For instance, they might make like 40 times more eggs than a smaller individual. So you can have one big fish that's equal to like 40 smaller fish that's still mature. So now I'm trying to bring that into a map of New Zealand and see where the different concentrations of those big ladyfish are for snapper, blue cod, and hockey. And then I'm also then overlaying a bunch of maps about where the whales are, where the dolphins are, where the threatened species are, where general fishing catch is. And I'm sort of trying to trade them all off against each other to come up with new marine reserve ideas. That's the plan. So yeah, it's basically my PhD is how do we design marine reserves to benefit fishing and conservation. Yeah, I think that's about it from me.
Awesome, thank you so much. That was really cool. I'll start us off with a question. How did you find your whale shark job, and would you recommend these kind of volunteering style jobs for people to go to, like after COVID?
I don't know. I've always been, it's a tough way up. I've always been a bit of a cheapskate, and I've always not wanted to get ripped off. And I think it became really popular in the last 10 years to charge a lot of money to volunteers. And when they, I think it depends on the project. I think some of them, you're literally going there and you're not doing a lot. Like one of my friends went to the Komodo Islands to help with Komodo dragon conservation. And unfortunately, all she did was basically make a sign for 2 weeks. That was it. And she didn't get to do much field work or surveying or anything that she really wanted to. But there are really good ones out there as well. And I think it's just a case of finding contacts, whether that's from your degree or your master's studies. In my case, it was through one of my master's lecturers. They'd done a bit of work with the Maldives Whale Shark Research Program a few years back. they'd had students go out there before. And I said I really wanted to do something with sharks. That was my main interest, because we all had to say what we wanted to do our placement on. So I thought, well, why not go big and just, if I go for sharks and it doesn't come off, I can always look at like goldfish or something else. No offense to goldfish lovers out there. So they put me in touch with them, and then they said, we sort of negotiated a price, and then I paid for my flights and flew out and went there for a month. And I think that was good experience because it was relatively inexpensive and I got to do quite a lot. And I also got to be in a place that was like incredible. It was really like being in a documentary each day. And I think it's about, you have to weigh it up with your goals, whether it's sort of learning or experience, and then contact the charity directly. I also did some volunteering in the Amazon, when I was a bit younger, when I was about 25 or maybe 26. I went on a trip to South America just to do a bit of traveling. And I did learn a bit of, oh, by the way, if anyone goes there, you've got to learn Spanish 100%. So I learned a bit of Spanish, like baby Spanish. I went to South America and did some volunteering at a charity called Marizonia, and that's an animal refuge. And I sort of learned, that one was free. And it's really good. They take animals that people bring them or that they found that have been hurt, and then they rehabilitate them and release them into the jungle. So there are good options out there. But yeah, I think it's important to suss them out yourselves and make sure you're happy with them, and try and get someone who's done it or who knows them, so you know it's legit.
Cool. If anyone has questions, you can unmute yourself or put them in the chat. How did you find doing your PhD at a university outside of the UK? I'm sure most of the students here would, we're all pretty based in New Zealand, so.
Yeah, I guess it's been a bit different. I think it was strange. In fact, it was strange. So in the UK, it's like they're real rigid on this 3-year thing. So like a PhD is 3 years. You speak to anyone and they say, oh, it's 3 years. And then I was thinking, okay, great, PhD 3 years. And then I got here and I went to a couple of meetings, and then one of my co-supervisors is Carolyn Lundquist, and she works for NIWA, and she brought me in as a scribe to just a few meetings with Doc and NIWA, just so I could get a bit of a nosy in. And everyone I talked to was like, you'll never finish in 3 years. Don't worry about it. It'll be 4 years minimum. And then I was thinking, I get used to this like New Zealand lifestyle. This kind of suits this sort of more laid back approach. But then I also realized you're in their funding for so long, so that I quickly sort of snapped out of that. But yeah, I think it's been fine. I think a lucky thing if you're thinking about going overseas, it's quite an easy adjustment because universities worldwide, they're quite globalized in that way. Like they're all quite similar. You have papers, or you have lectures that you're giving, or whatever it is. There's certain expectations, like academically, that you have to achieve. So I just sort of looked at it like that, really.
Cool. Tyler has asked if we can contact you if we have any more questions. So I'll put everybody's email in the chat for that. But yeah, if there's any other questions? No, I think we're good. Awesome. Thanks so much, Tamlin. And we'll pass over to Eddie.
Hi, Wednesday. Thank you. So I'll just start sharing my screen.
That looks awesome. Yeah.
Can you see it? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we sure can.
Okay.
I will just.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you, Wednesday, for inviting me to this session in this evening. I'm happy to chat about some of my experience, how I into marine science, and now I'm doing my PhD at the University of Auckland. So to start with, let me introduce myself. I'm a PhD candidate at UMSS, and I'm a New Zealand Asian Scholarship awardee. So thanks to Ampat that gave me some funding to do a PhD at the uni. And then at the moment, I'm also the database manager for the Bird Escape Reef Mentoring and Whale Shark Photo ID. And I'm also a National Geographic Explorer, and I'm also the 2019 Russell E. Train Fellows. So thanks to Nat Geo and Russell E. Train that give me funding to do research on manta ray in Raja Ampat. So I did my bachelor studies in marine science at IPB University in Indonesia. And I did my master's in marine conservation at the University of Tasmania, Australia. I want to share a bit about my background. I was born in a small town in central Java near Mount Merapi. So it's one of the most active volcanoes at the moment. So it's far from the coast of course. And I grew up in a low income and less educated family. My parents didn't finish their primary school, so that gave me like I want to set a goal that I want to achieve as higher as possible in academic. And of course, I didn't have the ability to swim, so don't ask about that. And as a child, I didn't have idea about the Indonesian marine mega biodiversity at the moment, because I live in a small town, and at that time Indonesia didn't really explore much about their marine environment. And then, so how it was started? So it was actually I watched an ad on TV. So there was a diver showing his thumb like that, so thumb up. I think it's really cool, and then that simply inspired me to be a diver. Basically, I want to be that guy in the future. And then, long story short, I did my my bachelor study at IPB University, and there I joined a fisheries diving club. So in that club, I learned how to swim, not how to dive. So at first, I had to learn how to swim, of course, otherwise they will kick me out from the club. So I spent 4 years, 3 or 4 years in the diving club. I learned how to scuba dive, and I learned how to do scientific diving. So at the time, I learned how to do fish survey, basically counting reef fish, estimating the size, and then starting from that, I learned about how to do reef health monitoring. And then that kind of skills that I had during at the university and the diving club brought me to a number of organizations that I work with. So at first, I worked with the Indonesian Coral Foundation, the Tauranga Foundation. It's a local NGO working in marine protected area in Jakarta. And then I worked there for 3 years, and then I step up to work with Conservation International Indonesia in West Papua. And when I worked with CI, that gave me an opportunity to work in marine science and marine conservation. And I also have a good exposure to international network and world-class scientists at that time. And then at that time also, so once I finished with CI, I also worked with some other organization like WWF Indonesia and WWF US. And also now I'm affiliated with the Manta Trust in the UK. And actually, my exposure with manta ray, which is this beautiful animal, it was when I worked with CI. At that time, the Indonesian government announced Indonesia as the largest manta ray sanctuary, and we need lots of information about the population status of the manta rays in Indonesia. Of course, without knowing about the status of the population, how do we protect them? And that so at the time that brought me into the opportunity brought me into I think I thought it was a good opportunity for me to move on from my field, from doing reef health monitoring to do a more specialist in Monterey. And I started my study at the University of Tasmania, and then I focused on Monterey since 2013. So for my PhD, I have a specific goal. I want to be a leading Indonesian elasmo brain scientist. So there's always specific reason why I wanted to do my PhD. And of course, if you want to do a postgrad, you have to have a specific goal, because there's no way back. So you have to set a specific goal for that. And my topic for my PhD is I want to focus about the population dynamics and spatial movement ecology of reef manta rays in Raja Ampat. So in my PhD, I use photo ID and mark recapture, and I also use satellite telemetry and passive acoustic telemetry to study their movement and behavior. And I also use drones to observe their behavior. And a bit about how I use photo identification. So as you might know, every individual manta ray, they have a unique pattern that never change throughout their lifetime. So for example, here, this baby manta, it was first time seen in 2013, but in 2019, we saw him again as a adult male. So this is just one of the benefits of using photo identification for a long term. So the other thing that I use for my study is using a satellite telemetry. So basically, you deploy a satellite tag on manta ray, and then so the tag will stay there for a couple of months, 3 to 6 months, and then track where they move. So for example, here, we deploy the satellite tag on a juvenile, and we found that this area is actually a nursery area. So yeah, it's kind of cool to see one of the benefits of using satellite tags. So we can see here that this area is fully covered by the track of the baby. And then the other thing I also use is using in my research, I use drones. So drones has been really useful and helpful in my research for doing survey and also observing the behavior of this animal. And another thing that I do using drone is measuring the size of manta rays. And I think I will present this during the research showcase in the end of this month. And so, important question, do you want to do a postgrad, either a master's or PhD? I think you need to ask yourself about your motivation. Do you really need to do a master's or pursue a PhD? If you don't have a specific answer or specific goal, don't do that. Do other stuff. Maybe you need to find a job. But if you have reasons, then start to do a PhD or master's. The other thing that you have to consider is finding a funding source. I think Georgia and Tamlin has discussed a lot about this, but in my case, as I said, I didn't have funding to cover my study. So for my master's in Tasmania, for example, I applied for a scholarship from the Australian government, and for my PhD at the University of Tasmania, I applied for a scholarship from the New Zealand government. So I'm quite lucky to have lots of parties to fund my study. And then the other important thing is choosing the right course, and this is really the key thing that you really want to learn or to improve. Otherwise, you won't feel comfortable, and you won't have a great you don't have a good grade, or basically you can't improve if you don't like what you study. And then choosing the right university, that's really important. For example, for myself, what I did is read the course description, what they offer, or ask my colleagues or my friends about the topic, about what sort of aspect from doing master's or PhD in that university. And some reasons, it's not always academic reason. I mean, when you choose university, for example, when I chose Tasmania, it's not about the reputation of the university. It's about living experience. I wanted to have experience in the southernmost area in Australia, for example, and I wanted to experience living in a four season in a country with a four season. So that kind of simple reason can be a good reason, actually. And then choosing the supervisors. So of course you need to consider what's their expertise. Is it the same field that you want to learn? And you also need to consider supervisors are busy, super busy, and they already have lots of students in their lab. So you need to you need to think, you need to ask yourself why they should supervise you, why they should accept you in their lab. So you need to convince them so that they can accept you. And then the other thing that if you wanna know about your supervisor, or just email them. They are super busy, and often they won't reply your email. So maybe you need to ask someone else, either your colleague or your boss, to introduce you to the supervisor. And then I think it's also important to bring your own ideas. So if the supervisor have their own project that you can involve with, that's good. They can bring you in, but often it's also good to bring your own ideas. So and then, so for example, before I did my PhD, I already worked on manta rays for 5 years, for example, and I've been collected my data since then. So before I started my PhD, I already have my own data, my own project. So in that case, I at that time in 2017, I spoke to my supervisor if she liked my idea, my project, and then now I'm here. And then how many supervisors? Is it 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? It depends. I have 4 supervisors in my committee. So Rochelle Constantine is my main supervisor, and I also have Mark Erdman, who also has been helping me shaping my career. I've been working with him in the last 8-9 years in West Papua. So basically he is my mentor. Rochelle has been really helpful to keep me feel motivated, and super awesome woman. And then Ben Stevenson, a really smart guy. He is a statistician, has been really helping me with stats analysis. And Fabrice, he's in Australia at the moment, and he's a Manta expert. So having a good combination of expertise in the committee is really important. So it doesn't matter about the number, but the idea is to bring all their expertise into my research. And then some more advice, if you're still keen, I always emphasize this, so experience. So getting lots of experience is really important for me. It's really important to build your CV. So doing voluntary work, doing internship, it's going to be really helpful, especially if you don't have lots of professional experience. I did lots of internship in the some of them, including in the Zoological Society of London, at Duke University, and some other places as well. And be a specialist and an expert. So it's really important to stand out from the crowd. Of course, people won't see you if you're in the middle of the crowd, otherwise. But if you're shiny enough to be seen from far, that will be good. And then I think it's also important to have a specific skills in marine science, for example, that not many people have, like diving or even mapping, doing GIS, statistical analysis is really important, like Georgia said, and drone, it's really important as well, and some other skills. And then professional network is really important. We don't know. In the future, that might be useful to have lots of people in your circles. And then strong work ethic is really, really the key thing, actually, that keeps you on top of your work. So discipline, dedication, teamwork, and that sort of stuff. And then one thing that keeps me motivated is always review and renew my goals. So I always update my my goal. I have some annual goals that I have to achieve, and that's something that keeps me motivated until now. And then don't forget about your friends, about your colleagues, about your family. They are here, they're near you to talk to share about your happiness and other stuff. And thank you. I hope that's useful.
That was so awesome. Thank you so much, Lee. It's really cool to hear about your journey, and of course your mentorees as well. So we have a question in the chat about is Raja Ampat the biggest conservation area for mentorees?
Yeah, thank you for your questions. Actually, it's not Raja Ampat, but it's Indonesia. So because Indonesia declared as so the Indonesian government in 2014 declared the full protection of manta rays in the country, and that's actually initiated by the Raja Ampat government in 2012. So the initiative was started in Raja Ampat, and then it was expanded into a national level.
We have another one. How did you become a Nat Geo Explorer?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So basically, a Nat Geo Explorer is a term. So everyone that have received funding from Nat Geo Society for doing research or anything, they are called as a Nat Geo Explorer. So I got funding to do a research on a nursery area in Raja Ampat from Nat Geo Society. So yeah, it's a big community. Lots of researchers, lots of journalists, photographers. Yeah, interesting.
Could you tell us a little bit about your work with Manta Trust New Zealand?
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, so my colleague here, Lydia Green, she is the project leader of Manta Watch New Zealand. So we knew each other from because the Manta Watch New Zealand also affiliated with Manta Trust in the UK. Yeah, so because I couldn't go to Indonesia for doing field work during summer, that's why I spent a lot of time during summer helping my colleague Lydia to do a research on manta ray in the Hauraki Gulf, and we did some good results in the past summer. We found lots of mantas in a feeding aggregation, and hopefully we'll do some other trips during summer next summer.
Cool. We have a question from Leo. How did you contact Nat Geo, or did they contact you?
Yeah. So actually, if you open their website, they actually have a page that actually you can apply for funding from Nat Geo. There are a couple of categories that to choose from. Yeah, so basically you submit a proposal to them and they will review your proposal, and yeah, if you're successful, they will give you funding, and then you become officially a Nat Geo Explorer. I will look into the website and I'll share that here.
Eddie, when you applied for the Nat Geo scholarship, do you have help? Was there someone else who helped you with the application? Because when I looked at it, it's quite an intense scholarship application.
Pardon me? Can you repeat that?
When you applied for the Nat Geo funding, did you have assistance with your scholarship application? Did someone help you fill it in, or like give you some pointers on, or a contact who knew what they were looking for?
Yeah, so actually I got the funding from Nat Geo before I got my PhD scholarship. So my supervisor Mark Edmond helped me with that application, and here the reference is really important, and in your CV. So having a CV, a good CV and a good supervisor is really important. A good reference is really important is the key to get some other funding like from Nat Geo.
Nice, thanks.
Okay, so
Awesome. We have another question about building a CV. What do people look out for, and what would stand out?
That's a good question. Actually, I never asked them about my CV. Is my CV a good one or not, or is it good enough and stands out from other people's CV? But I can say I don't know. So I think what they look for is they really want to see the people who really focus on their field, and I think having a good publication or papers is also not doesn't need to be a scientific papers, but can be an article that published in website or in magazines. Yeah, I think that kind of things that it's really helpful if you put that in your CV, and having experience in different areas, different organization is also helpful, I think. Yeah, maybe Tamli, you have some answers. Yeah, I think it's a good questions from Leonardo.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add on that. I think maybe if you know a recruiter or maybe a supervisor that you've had before, or someone, just try and get as much advice as you can on what a good CV is. I I think it needs to be something like, don't be afraid to sell yourself. I think that's the one area. Sometimes people can be a bit shy about their achievements, or they'll say it, but they don't sort of push it. And one thing that I've been quite lucky with was one of my theses for my master's, just out of chance, really. Well, maybe it's not completely out of chance, but it's kind of how I see it. So we had to do 2 theses. So I did one on the whale sharks, and the other one was on fisheries around the UK. And it ended up being, some of the work ended up being presented at Westminster, at our House of Commons to the government. And it was with a bundle of other work, of other students as well. And my supervisor was presenting it. I didn't go down or anything. But it's just, I think if you're doing work, sometimes, a bit of luck will come your way, and then that's a great scalp for your CV, and make sure you've got it on there. Because, I didn't do that, so I sort of forgot about it. And then I was reading my CV a year ago, and I thought, oh, yeah, that actually sounds quite good. Work used in House of Commons or government negotiations during Brexit. And it's amazing when you start, putting the time in to do extra projects as well, how they can kind of turn into more. So it's always worth doing a bit more. But yeah, make sure you really sell yourself on your CV, because everyone else is, and you need to get ahead.
Yeah, and for Leonardo, volunteering work is really, really important, because that's something that you can put on your CV, of course. Doing internship in other places, for example, I think having experience in overseas is also important. And there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of organization. For example, in Indonesia, they open opportunities from overseas students to come and help with the community development or something else.
Yeah, and you can always add on things that you've done in your courses as well. So if you did, say, a dissection or taxonomy skills, you can always put that on your CV as an undergrad, and even as a postgrad as well. So, good skills. Yeah, Georgia and Melanie, did you have anything to add to that? The CV skills building?
Yeah, I think definitely if you can include, anything that you've done, including, group projects at uni, as much as some people dread them, they can be great sources of experience for working with others, even if they're not positive experiences. You can always talk about your own contributions that you had. So definitely.
You can try.
Even, sorry, my partner's talking in the background. Try to include everything that you can that will have a transferable skill, I would say.
Yeah, I think if you have some skills like photography or writing blogs, that's something that maybe it's something usual for you, but I think it's really important to put them in your CV as well. Some simple thing that you thought is simple, but that can be different if you put that in your CV.
Wednesday, could I add something? I just saw someone pop something in the chat.
Yeah, of course.
I also just want to say, I feel like everyone here has talked a lot about having all these great skills that they've gained from internships and experience and volunteering. There is also an element when you're an undergrad, if you haven't done any of those things, you don't need to panic. You can still, you've got so much time ahead of you to go ahead and do these things, and to you still can have the opportunity to go into postgrad and do your master's. I'm doing my master's this year, and this is the first year I've ever applied for a scholarship. I haven't done any internships, none of that kind of thing. My CV is very poor, but I'm here and I'm still, making making the effort to change that from now onwards, basically. Yeah. Don't panic, basically, is what I'm saying. If you haven't done it yet, you've still got time.
Definitely. Annabelle's doing Southern Right Wales, so you can still get the cool masters.
Yeah, Annabelle is also, yeah, she's a great student and has an awesome project, and yeah, totally nail on the head. You don't need to do all these things. She's, yeah, got where she is and has a scholarship without doing all these things in undergrad. Yeah.
Awesome. We've got one more. How did you contact people from other universities regarding international scholarships?
Good questions. So actually, the scholarship that I got didn't come from university, so it's from Ampat, and it's a G2G, so it's a collaboration between New Zealand government and Indonesian government. So they have a specific website that I can access to get the scholarship information. So it's not from the university. And yeah.
Do you have any advice, Tamlin? It's an international person.
I think just what I said before, really. You know, I think I ended up Googling. I'm a pretty simple guy, really. So I ended up just Googling, like, find a scholarship, PhD funding, stuff like that, and eventually came across different websites that had different lists of funds, and then you have to sort of look into them and see if you're eligible, or even if the country you're going to study in is eligible. That's sort of the main criteria. Yeah, I think just keep asking around. The way I applied was, as I mentioned, I asked, sort of put this proposal forward, and then my supervisor accepted it. So then it's also a case of contacting the university. You can email them and also email your supervisor and ask them if they know anyone or know of any other scholarships. Just keep asking questions. I've always found people quite approachable, and I think there's a tendency sometimes, like when I'd done my undergrad in physical geography, I was thinking, oh, I'll never get into marine stuff because everyone's done everything. But I think you kind of overthink it in your head, and actually it's a lot more accessible than you realize. It sounds great when you've got a CV that's got all this stuff on, but actually you were just bumbling around in an office for a couple of weeks and you put together some stuff that, that some people liked. So yeah, go for it and just email loads of people, basically.
Cool. There's another question for you, Tamlin. How do you find credible organizations that offer legit research opportunities overseas and not just rip you off? So kind of going into your whale shark stuff a little bit.
Yeah, I think you just have to try and find ones that someone else has done. I don't mean like necessarily that your friends have done, but just that you can get, that they're a bit more into the science, or they're matching up a bit more with what you're doing. But it is difficult to tell. And I think another thing you can do, actually, that I thought about, was it's not just volunteer organizations. We all get emails every now and then saying, oh, I'm a student from this school, or I've just finished this degree and I'm looking to get some hands-on experience. So I think emailing marine labs around the world, if you've got a bit of money to travel and, God willing, COVID leaves us. But even in New Zealand, just email different marine labs and see if people want a hand with anything. And it might just be that you end up crunching some stats, which might not be the most exciting for you, but it looks good on paper and it gets you a bit more. And when you're there, you might end up doing a bit of field work. So at the very least, I think there's opportunities. Just reach out, and if you send an email, all that's going to happen, worst case, is no one sends one back. So just go for it.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a little bit of chatting in the Zoom chat about the stipends. So there are automatic ones, like Tamlin said, where your grade kind of counts, but some of them don't require grades and are more application-based or leadership-based. So plenty to have a look around. There's also a question in the chat about computer recommendations for postgrad, i.e. laptop versus desktop. Yeah, do you guys have any recommendations about that before we jump off for the evening?
I didn't have anything specific myself. I was able to do the whole thing mainly just off my MacBook. But if you need any specific software, especially in a PhD where you're doing it over an extended period of time, it might be good not to have a Mac because Mac is not compatible with anything.
Yeah, the University of Auckland has a lot of desktop computers. So I know Tamlin and Eddie both have computers at the uni, and I technically do as well. But yeah, having a reliable computer is really good during lockdowns, especially. Leo has one last question about stats. Personally, not liking stats. You will have to do stats to analyze your data. Unfortunately, you don't really need to do too many courses, but you will have to analyze your data at some stage. Yeah, Eddie, do you have any stats advice?
I have a supervisor from statistical department that can help me. So that's why I have a statistician in my committee to help me with data analysis, because yes, stats, I hate stats, but I cannot avoid it. So it's part of postgraduate studies. So you just have to like it.
Yeah. One thing I will say, if you're part of the School of Biological Sciences, and I think a few of the other schools within UOA, they do have a stats consulting centre somewhere, where if you're not sure what kind of analyses you might want to use, you can sort of talk to them about your data, and they can help you design your statistical experiments and analysis. But yeah, definitely still useful to understand stats at the very least, so that you know what you're doing and how to analyze it and how to understand that analysis afterwards.
Yeah, actually, you don't have to learn stats for a semester, because I hate that. I hate sitting in a class. So I like doing stats for my own research or my own project. So yeah, so and now lots of stuff you can just Google it and then find lots of easy way of doing stats. There are lots of people having the same problem like you have, and if you Google, you'll find the same problem, and often you'll find the answers in the chats over there. Yeah.
That's such a good point, Eddie, if I can talk on that as well. I think some stats the way it's sometimes taught or the way it's presented, it can be so boggling. And sometimes I'll find this huge thing online. It will be, okay, I want to, I don't know what it might be, like copy this piece of data and take this bit with it and this bit, but not another bit. And I'll find this huge amount of code, and then I'll keep searching, because I've learned now you just keep searching, and then you just find this little one sentence of code that does the same thing. And it's so much easier to process, because you know, every time you're looking in and thinking, well, what does this mean? Like where are the functions, and where do I put my data file and things like that? So yeah, I think there's, you know, stats for dummies, you know, just get that sort of rudimentary understanding, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for telling us about your journeys and giving us some postgrad advice. Yeah, our next event is coming up in 2 weeks, and that is going to be a talk by the wonderful seaweed lady, Wendy Nelson. So she is one of the top seaweed people in the whole of New Zealand. She's written books, and she is going to come and chat to us. So that should be really cool. And you can find out more information on our Facebook event when we put that up. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. Yeah.
Thanks so much for hosting
so much,
Wednesday. That was awesome. Yeah, and feel free to contact any of us if you want any more questions. Have any more questions? Cool, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.